My name is Michael John Lazzari, and I was born October 8, 1937, in Denver, Colorado.
What made you get interested into the Navy or the service?
I liked the water and the idea of going to sea, plus movies that we saw at that time. There was a lot of movies about the military, and of all of them, I liked the Navy the best. And I also went on, when I was in high school senior, on a naval excursion to Hunters Point and others. It was a Navy auxiliary that for high school kids.
And so, what did it take to enlist into the Navy?
How do you enlist in the Navy?
No, what did it take to enlist in the Navy?
Oh, just went down to a recruiter and signed up.
Yeah.
That was it. And since I wasn't 18 yet, I was not, I didn't have a draft card, because when you were 18 in 1955, you had to sign up for the military and be eligible for the draft.
So you did get drafted?
No, I joined before I was 18, about a month before I was 18.
Okay. And so in enlisting in the Navy, did you go through basic boot camp?
Well, I was what's called a kiddie cruise, and the kiddie cruise was, if you join before you're 18, you get out when you're 21. So it was basically 3-year enlistment. We left San Francisco International Airport in September. It was noted that that was the day James Dean, the actor, died in a car crash.
Oh, wow. And so, so in leaving to sea, what were the locations or places you...
Okay, we went from San Francisco to the naval base in San Diego, California, which is boot camp. That was about 3 months boot camp training. And my parents came down to visit me when I was graduating, and I got off for about a week because my dad's mother died, so I got off on leave for about a week and then went back to boot camp.
And what was your description title in the Navy?
I was a recruit while we're in there, and then the next step up is being a seaman, and then the next step up for me, which when I left the Navy, I was a third-class petty officer.
Third-class petty officer?
Yes.
And what was that? What was your description? What would you do?
What I did, after boot camp, I went to electronics school, Navy electronics school in Treasure Island, California. And so I was near home, and at that time the Bay Bridge only had the top deck for cars. The bottom deck was a train going both ways, and both ways for trucks only. So I was stationed on Treasure Island for about 6 months learning electronics.
Cool. And what type of electronics would they?
Mine, general electronics, then my specialty was in sonar, which means that you find objects in the water.
Like torpedoes or?
No, you ping and you could see if there's any enemy ships, and other submarines and so forth.
Submarine.
Yeah. So I was, so the sonar is the Navy's way of scanning under the water, okay? And they use sound waves to do it. And sound waves, I think at the time, if I remember, was about 700 miles per hour that it traveled under the water. So you have a sonar thing on the bottom of your ship scanning what's around it, okay?
Did you guys ever have to do torpedoes or depth charges or stuff like that?
No, that wasn't part of electronics school. Okay, when electronic school was over, you were given your choice, depending on how you were in your class, of the Pacific in the Navy or the East Coast. I chose the East Coast. And the ship that I was assigned to was the USS Sullivans destroyer 537. It's called a USS Sullivans DD 537. It's named for the Sullivan brothers that all died on the Juno in World War II.
What size ship is that compared to other Navy vessels?
Well, now it was a 2150 class. So it wasn't, the destroyers they have now are much bigger and more sophisticated. This was a traditional look. You had two 5-inch guns in the front, in the back, and you had, in the midsection, you had two torpedoes that if you needed to fight, and that's basically what it is. And then we had outside passages. This means if I wanted to go from where the stern of the ship forward, we had to go on the deck, even in rough weather.
Worse than this weather?
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever have some close calls when you had to travel?
Not really. I don't like heights, and one of my first duties, the ship, we picked it up in Boston, Massachusetts, and it was in dry dock being refurbished. And so we were stationed in Boston in the barracks for about 2 or 3 months while the ship was being refitted. And then our initial cruise after being refitted was to go to the naval base in Cuba. And at that time, Bautista was the president of Cuba, and what's his name? Castro had not taken over yet. Okay, when we went to Cuba in the naval base, we did training exercises and so forth, and there was a lot of Navy people there to blow off steam. We'd go in big semi-trucks to bars, and guys would be fighting each other and everything. You know, you got a lot of kids, 19, 20, 21, stupid.
So a lot of bar fights?
Bar fights, that kind of stuff. On the way back, guys would be drunk, hitting each other. You know how young guys are.
Just being stupid?
That's it, should be it. You know, they're all under 25, so we're not all mentally developed. Yes, that's a good word for it, yeah. So after Cuba, when we went there, then we went to Cape Hatteras, which is in Virginia, and that's a Navy town, but the Navy seamen are looked on as scum in a way, because you know, they go to bars and get in trouble and stuff like that. The officers in the Navy at that time had stewards, and most of the stewards were African American, and the stewards waited on them, you know, helped be sure that they got fed. They had their own special quarters and all that kind of stuff. It was very, in the old days, the aristocrats versus the poor. In our ship, I was in the stern, which is the back of the ship, we had 3 tiers of, you know, what do you call it that you're in bed? You had 3 levels of beds above each other, and enough just to crawl in on yours. You could be on the bottom or the middle or the top. Yeah. And below that, they had, where you kept your stuff, they had lockers, metal lockers that were flat, and you had to put everything you had in there. That was it, but you only had your naval stuff, so you didn't have suits or stuff like that. You had water rationing because the evaporators on a ship like that don't put it out, so you had maybe a couple of times a week where you could take a shower, and if the ships weren't pumping out enough water, there were no showers, just drinking water. And our mess hall was forward, so when we went up, we had to go across these decks, even in rough weather, and we might go up above if it was really rough and walk over the torpedoes and then come down. And so it was, you know, You're young and stupid, and you don't really, you do what you're told. It's not like nowadays.
Yeah. Did anybody try to get you in trouble?
No, most guys are pretty good. Some guys were, their guys are older. An older guy might be a guy 23 or 24. And the draft was in at that time, and there were some guys that were just enlisted men that were college graduates because they didn't want to become an officer, and they were drafted in. And it was the Korean War ended in about January 1955, and then after that, there were no wars until when I got out of the Navy in 1958. They were going to Laos in South China Seas, I guess you would say.
Were you on the ship whenever they would do drills for the cannons in the front on the destroyer?
Yeah, we had drills. There was three other, we were a squadron or a flotilla. There were 4 ships, and they were all had Irish names. The McGowan was one of them, and I forget what the other ones were. And at sea, you might transfer stuff between a destroyer tender that had lots of supplies on it. And so they would be against each other and have not lines between 2 ships transporting stuff. And if a sailor got sick or was injured, he would be transported across there because you're out at sea. You might be out at sea for a couple of months. So our ship went to Europe, and on the way, we were supposed to go around Cape Hatteras, which is not Cape Hatteras, but Cape of Good Hope, which is at the tip of Africa. But we got orders that the war in Israel's war in 1957 was over, and so we went through the Med and went through the Suez Canal, and we were on the Red Sea patrol. So we were in the Red Sea for 3 or 4 months, went through Egypt and through Ethiopia. We got off there, and Asmara was one of the towns we had. So we had the Red Sea patrol, and then we came back and we went to into the Mediterranean. We stopped in Egypt, and so some of the guys got off ship. Then we went to Greece, and I got off ship there and in Athens and explored that. Lucky I took the early turn because the ship things happened and they had to get out of there earlier than they thought. But we all had to get back on the ship, of course, but the guys that were going to get off after for a free day, or they didn't get to go, but it was nice. And we went to, where else did we go? Basically Greece. I'm trying to remember. Okay, and then we headed back to the U.S. and we went through where the Gibraltar is, and we stopped in the Azore Islands, which at that time was owned by Portugal. And then we went all the way home. And after it was over a year, maybe 18 months, I was mustered off that ship in Boston, and then I picked up another ship called the Arcadia, which is a destroyer tender. And we went out to the World's Fair in Belgium. That's where we went. And at that ship too is that Navy personnel that were retired, or so it could bring their families along. So there were civilians along there too. And so we got to go to the World's Fair, which was pretty good. And it was in Belgium, outside Belgium, I think. And so you're talking 1957, 58, the World's Fair. So that was a good thing.
Was there anything at the World's Fair that stood out to you?
Well, since it's 1956 or 7, it's 12 years after the war. And you had Germany and other countries that were at war with, having their exhibits. But we, of course, didn't see those. And we also went, I think it was on the Arcadia, we went to Norway, went in through the Baltic Sea, and we got off there. And the people were very nice to us, buy us drinks and stuff like that. And so that was far north. And Then we went home, and it was about August of 1958, and I was due to get out before I was 21, so I got out in August of 1958 and went to school. I enjoyed being in the Navy. I really liked it. When I was in Boston, I had a couple of girlfriends, and so it was good.
Were they from Boston?
Yeah, from Boston. One was from Medford, and the other was from Watertown.
Did they have a Boston accent?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people in those days, because they didn't have the media that we have now, so you know in the United States that you hear somebody from New York, they speak the same as from San Francisco. But way back then, there was the Boston accent, there was the Brooklyn accent, and things have changed because the United States is more of a together than states and areas that, you know. So walked a lot around Boston, where I was also stationed. Our station in the States for our particular ship was Rhode Island, okay, and that's where the naval ships was, and it was good.
Yeah, how many of your sailor buddies were from Boston or from New England?
A couple were from New England, one was from Vermont, but they were from all over the country.
Could they tell that you were from San Francisco?
Yeah, you know, they heard about it. On another ship, the 2200 class, which was bigger than ours, a friend of mine that went to high school with me, he was on that ship, and we happened to meet up. And, but, you know, and a lot of the people from the South were married when they're about 19 or 20. But it was good. I loved Boston. When I had leave or something, I would go all over the place because the Kennedys, of course, were big even then. And, you know, there's just all the sites that you read in history about the Revolutionary War and so forth. You saw those places.
The Revolutionary Wars?
Yeah. All the places in Boston because of the Tea Party, and they had the ship on aboard, the Constitution, which is a sailing ship. They called it Old Ironsides. And they had Boston. Boston's a really unique place.
Did you go on that ship?
Went and took a tour of it, yeah. On the first cruise on the USS Sullivans, we had about 10 or 15 German sailors on there who, you know, we were at peace now with Germany, of course, it's 1958, and they would get seasick. You know, so I was one of the lucky ones, never got seasick. And we had one officer that had got out of Annapolis or officer school, and he was, you know, acted like he was a Marine. Nice guy, but he got deadly sick. He picked the wrong type of military to go in. But we had a lot of fun. You know, it was a good experience, and I personally think that most young people, men and women, should spend some time in the military.
Did you have a best friend or somebody?
I had a guy named, we called him Ski. He was a big 6'4" guy, and actually after I got out of the Navy, he stopped by in San Francisco 2 or 3 years after. But I was somewhere, and your mom talked to him, I guess, about me, Kudowski. But, and there's a couple other guys. One guy, Tabak, was a good guy, and he ran a business lending people money. So they would get, like, if they borrowed $5 because they ran out before payday, they had to pay 10 back. And so he made himself a lot of money. And I never had to borrow, but we only got about $60 a month. You know, as you went up your pay grade, you got a little more, but it wasn't much.
What was his interest rate?
Well, that guy, this was 100%. But there were guys that did that, so as he built up his thing, he was the guy that had the money to lend.
Will we give them a knuckle sandwich if they didn't pay up?
No, I don't know. People that want to borrow money, they don't want to hurt the people that are lending them the money.
Oh,
You know, so. But anyway, I think it's a worthwhile experience. I never regret it. And when I got out after I was going to school, I joined the Naval Reserve and went on a couple of weekend things that they had, and I didn't like it, so I got out of that. And luckily, I never got called back because they were going into Laos in 1958 or said, and probably if I'd stayed in, then once they went into Vietnam in '63, you know, we would have been over there. So I was lucky. I got to be in the service, but didn't see any combat.
have you, in the last 50 years, met anybody, or maybe the last 30 years, that you were in service with?
No, I can't remember meeting anybody.
Have you revisited the ship that you sailed on, or?
I think it's gone. It's been retired. It was 2150 class in World War II near the end of it. And it was named for the 5 Sullivan brothers that died on the Juno. And they either scrapped it or sold it to some third world country for their Navy. And Barbara has a picture of the ship. So
Barbara has a picture of the ship?
yeah.
Was there any other ship that you thought was really great, aircraft carrier or a battleship or anything like that?
Not when I was in the Navy, but I visited Pearl Harbor and saw the Arizona, and I took tours on various aircraft carriers over the time. But you know, those ships now, that's 60 years ago. And,
You went on the Midway?
I've been on the Midway, I remember, but that's like World War II. You know, it's vintage, right? I think the Midway was equivalent. I think I went on the Yorktown to visit, to see how it was in San Francisco. I forget.
Did the Yorktown did it sink?
The Yorktown, in a battle with the Japanese, was severely damaged. They got it back to Pearl Harbor within a few days, and they refurnished it and was out in less than a month. It was back in service.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
On the Midway, they gave a different story that the Japanese got it twice.
Yeah, they could probably. Well, that they refurbished, but they saved it. The battle at Midway was a turning point in the Pacific War. It made it change. It was a heck of a battle, but we don't hear much about it. But our submarines sunk lots of Japanese ships. And since they were a nation that relied on trade and didn't have many resources, that crippled them. But our submarines would wait outside Japan in the waters and wait for ships to come, and then they would torpedo them and sink them.
Wow.
You know, we talk a lot about the Germans doing that, but we did a lot of it too.
Yeah. Any other stories or things you want to share about your time in the service?
No, it was just a great time. You know, seeing different places, seeing Egypt, seeing Ethiopia, the Red Sea, seeing the Mediterranean, seeing Greece, and seeing Gibraltar and Azores. Whenever I had a chance, if we stopped at a port, I took leave to get off. You know, they give you like a day, like on this ship, they give you so many hours and you can.
Yeah. Was there any of those ports that is a memorable port?
Athens, Greece was.
What made it memorable?
Because it was, I'm a history guy, and just seeing some of the stuff from history, it was good. And Egypt also, you know, even though we're in the Suez Canal, being in a place that has memorable history. I can't really think of anything now else. And of course, the World's Fair, going to the World's Fair when you're 19 or 20 years old and seeing all these exhibits, you know, that was worthwhile in Belgium. And also going to Norway and Baltic Ocean, and we got off, the people were very friendly to us. And I had an old Argus camera. It took lots of slides in all these places. So I never regret going in. But of course I had it easy. Didn't have to go to any battle or anything like that.
Is there anything you'd want to say to your grandkids if you could, if you think the service or that is something they should maybe consider?
I think maybe not nowadays, back when I was in, that being in the service is a good experience for you. You know, I don't never regret it. And you're serving your country, you know. It's like Kennedy said, do not ask what you can, your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It was a different mindset when I was there. We followed what our country did, but of course we were exposed to lots of war movies where the U.S. was always the victor and always the good guy, which isn't really true. Okay, that's about it that I can remember.